Without analytics, I mean, I'm telling you a story, but you can't afford to have everyone that you deal with or every piece of data that you have tell you a story, right? You have the data and that's all you have, and the data gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So now you're looking at thousands of records, you're looking at hundreds of thousands potentially in the different systems. We need something to analyze it so we can assess the risk. So analytics, this is an example of it, and you don't need to be a rocket science. You used to need to be before. When the company started, you needed to be pretty much a PhD in statistics to figure out what this is. This is a cluster analysis for data mining. So it puts groups together based on profiling. And I don't want to get too technical, but basically you click on a button and you tell it to do a regression, a linear regression, or another type of data mining technique. And it tells you the clustering of the different groups. So you start analyzing the risk factors. And I'm going very high level here, but the idea is that after you analyze it, you start producing reports. This is a SaaS report. This happens to be for fraud claims. So it's a dashboard in a European country where you have the different risk levels. As you can see here, you could be red, yellow, orange, depending on how bad the risk is measured. And then this brings me to the next step of analytics in fraud management and risk management, which is social network analysis. That social network analysis basically brings me to this picture, which is putting together the story that I was telling you that, there's 3 kids, one of them is my older son from my ex-wife. I'm not Mormon, not that there's anything wrong with that, if anybody's Mormon here. But I do have an ex-wife with 1 kid. He's 18, and I have a current wife. Sometimes I call her my future ex-wife. She doesn't like that. And 2 kids, Alejandro and Santiago. So it brings you to the point of something that comes out of SaaS, which is analysis rings, right? This is what you're going to see, hopefully, in action today. If you cannot get the WebEx working and have a demo that's a self-running demo and a video that tells you how this works, it's for banking, but it applies pretty much for any public sector or any other industry. Different applications. For instance, this one is a fraud analysis of a social ring. It's called a social network, where it's not Facebook, it's not Twitter. That's another kind of analysis, right? The social network analysis is you look for commonalities in the data, and you can't look physically because there's not enough time in the day to go through all the records, and there may be some data quality issues, like we talked about Colombia being misspelled, right? So you let the data, you let the application do the work for you and create these special rings, right? So you can see how people are associated. That's how you start ranking the potential fraud or the potential risk for certain operators. Whether it be merchandise, whether it be the profile of the operator, the technique at the end of the day is the same technique. You have the data, you bring it together, you do some data quality to it, and you apply data mining techniques. Okay? Any questions on the rings? It's pretty clear, right? This, by the way, if there's another technique that it's called nodes, which brings together the information that may be fraudulent or not fraudulent. It could be also for customers selling. I can use this. I mentioned Digicel uses this, for instance, and other companies in the Caribbean, to find out who they should market to, right? So who's the center of attention? So in my case, in my house, my wife is the one that's got all the friends. I have no friends. So if they want to market to somebody, who they're going to market to? My wife, right? So they're going to know that through the different, for instance, if it's a telephone company, to the telephone phones, calls that she makes, who she calls, how often, who calls her, I don't know if they have it here, but the telcos have the 5 friends or the favorite people, 5 friends, right? They have that. There's a purpose behind that, because they want to know who you're talking to and how popular you are. So they create this type of rings, right? And then they figure out who's the center of attention, who's the social butterfly, so to speak. And that way they can market to you. This I couldn't get to work, but this is the alert screen, in the sense that you can't read it. But pretty much what it is, it's a case management system that has, in this case, let's talk about customs and the operator, and the transaction itself, or the transactions. And in this column you have based on the ranking given by the social network analysis, or by the data mining techniques, you have the potential risk factors. So the higher the risk, the higher you rank it, right? You also want to eliminate the false positives. Okay, does anybody know what false positives are? Anybody want to volunteer? A false positive is, for instance, has it ever happened to anybody that you've been traveling overseas and your credit card gets denied? Has that happened to you? It happens to a lot of people. Not because you ran out of credit, but because the bank may think you're being fraudulent, right? That somebody took your credit card and went to Miami for the day and went shopping. But in reality, it wasn't a fraud, it was you. And that affects customer service. So you want to eliminate the false positives. Okay, so what are we going to cover today? We got about an hour and a half, but I'm trying to compress it so that we get the maximum message for the two types of audience that we have. And we have a demonstration of how it was done for a customer in Mexico, for Mexico Customs. So analytical solutions for customs and risk and fraud management. Okay, what does that mean? There's different perspectives on risk management, and there's different opinions on how you deal with it. Some people think it's about the process, right? The way that you do the inspections, the paperwork, the different workflow that you follow, the procedures, etc. Some people think it's about experience, so you have experienced investigators and experienced analysts that pretty much have a sense or have a gut feeling because they've been working for 10, 20 years in the customs department and they know who to pull and how to profile someone.